Tom LaVecchia here with the New Theory podcast. Today, we have a very, very special guest today. We interview a lot of entrepreneurs, and a lot of times they have a story which is great. However, in this particular story, this is a true rags to success story, and she's building her story each and every day. From Alabama, from Trailer Park, literally, to Park Avenue, which we'll talk about. Theresa Pinson, owner of Virtual Skin Spa. Welcome to the New Theory podcast. How are you doing today, Theresa?
I'm wonderful. How are you guys?
Well. All right. So here's how we started, and hopefully you listened to my podcast before. If you're not, you're in trouble, right? Give us your formative years, where you grew up, and kind of what makes you you.
Okay, so I always have to go back to the trailer park because my clients love that part of the story as well. I grew up in a very rural community in Alabama called Newton, and with not a lot of money or resource, and I just started working. I had my first job babysitting and pumping gas at 11, 12, and I could even change transmission fluid, if you can imagine that.
Oh, wow.
But I don't do much of that anymore. But those were the years where I realized that if I were going to be successful, that I had to rely on myself.
Okay.
So I learned how to get really creative, resourceful, and utilize opportunities that I found that were around. If you look hard enough.
Okay, so you started out in a rural area. We're going to fast forward a little bit. You know, I know Theresa for years, about probably north of 10 years now, and you're a caregiver. You're a nurse by training because you're a caregiver, right? So you got into nursing. Why don't you walk us through that? So that, you know, I don't want to jump too much, but the same token, I really want to lay the foundation for who you are as a person before we get into you as an entrepreneur. So you got into nursing. Walk us through that.
Well, I felt a real calling. I think I innately am a caregiver, and I found that I got a lot of satisfaction from taking care of others, even like my little brother, my friend. I don't know. I just always had a calling to take care of others. And I had a shrink once tell me a long time ago that we always give away what we want to receive. And I think in my formative years, I felt like I was alone a lot, and I didn't have a lot of care. My mother was working outside of the home, working at night. So I think by virtue, I turned me into this caring, loving, because I think you give what you want to receive. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. Kind of like the basis, you know, for The Secret, and then obviously Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. Kind of what you draw in is what you'll get. So that makes sense, and that kind of maybe mentality is part of the reason why you've been so successful. Okay, so you got into traditional nursing, but then you had a penchant for for aesthetics. And even more so, you came to New York. So tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I started my career as a nurse in open heart and cardiovascular care. And I just saw a lot of people suffering because of poor lifestyle choices. So I really wanted to sort of push that concept further. Like I was always telling my husband at the time, who was a cardiologist, you should get treadmills and put them in your waiting room. So while people are waiting, they can just get exercise, or put some stationary bikes, or bring in a diabetic educator or a nutritionist to help educate your patients on diet. Yeah. So I was always a forward thinker. But obviously, 20 years ago in Alabama, that didn't happen. So sure. I was always looking for ways to help empower people, right? Yeah. So I'll be very honest, when I went to graduate school, I was in my 30s, I became a nurse practitioner. And when I looked around, I was one of my only friends who had been smart enough to get a little Botox. Nothing crazy. I really got into an aggressive skincare program, skin regimen in my 30s, using a lot of retinols. And I just looked around to my friends and I was like, wow, I'm aging better than any of them, because I was in the sun a lot, playing a lot of tennis in my previous life. Now I work a lot, but that's my new passion. But I got sidetracked. I'm sorry. So anyway, I looked around. I was looking better. I felt better about myself. And I was like, wow, I really think that I would like to learn to do this, So I looked around at a lot of different programs for aesthetics. And really, 15 years ago, there wasn't that many nurse practitioners doing Botox and fillers. And the ones that were working with physicians, right?
Correct.
Plastic surgeon, dermatologists. Well, I stumbled upon late one night in my bedroom with my son fast asleep in the next room.
Okay, Theresa, where did you stumble across the opportunity?
All right, so late one night, I was up, looking for jobs, looking at in my hometown, Dothan, for jobs, and in the aesthetic, I spoke to my dermatologist. He was all gung ho, but then when it came down to really formulating a plan and me coming on board, he was very resistant. I think that he was afraid of change. So, and plus, had been married to a physician in this town. He was very well respected, well known, still is, and I had like an X on my head. Unfortunately, in divorce, sometimes people take sides, and even though I am a good person in that little small town, he was the doctor and he was God, and so everybody thought they were always going to be very loyal to him, even his fellow colleagues. So me trying to collaborate with a physician in Dothan was just not an option. I learned very quickly. And I always go back, and I love to say this, I could have lived off my son's child support very well for many years, and could have had lots of alimony, but I chose to take a different path, which I'm very proud of.
Okay, so
I'm up at night looking for a job, want to do aesthetics, and I see this job opportunity in Manhattan, New York City, Fifth Avenue, working for a company called Skin Clinic, they've since gone out of business. So Skin Clinic was the first time a medical and a business model combined. They had a CEO who was Kathy Dorner, and we had a plastic surgeon as our medical director. I flew to New York, interviewed for the job, no experience. They hired me on the spot. So now I made a very difficult choice, come to New York, start and reinvent myself, basically.
Okay.
A lot of sacrifice. So I found a little apartment. I went to work on Fifth Avenue, and literally we had a 6-week intensive program where we were one-on-one with medical director, and we learned everything from the basic to started with Skin 101. We started with Botox, dynamic wrinkles, everything, fillers, lips, and it was a great, I have to say, that company did an amazing job training us, because when I left that company after a year, I had a very strong skill set. Was very confident. We had a beeper, it was hysterical, and we were booked at 15 to 30-minute intervals, depending on the type of service we were providing. And that beeper would go off, and you knew your next one was ready. So I learned to do high volume. I had to demonstrate great results, because on Fifth Avenue, we were charging top dollar. So it was great exercise in how to stay on track, to stay focused, but also to never let that patient, that person sitting in my chair, feel that way. They always felt as if they had my undivided attention. But I learned very quickly, because we were driven by numbers. Yes, outcomes. We had to medically, make them look prettier and do the Botox, the perfect, But importantly, we were held to a number that we had to reach every month. So I learned how to meet goals.
Okay. Well, so also, and now it's different, and Virtual Skin Spa is probably one of the leaders in the New York area for this model. But in the past, it wasn't a convenient service. For example, if you wanted to get Botox, you had to go see a plastic surgeon, dermatologist. If it's a dermatologist, they may see medical patients, and you might have to wait 4 weeks. It wasn't kind of a run and gun procedure like it is today, and that was, I think, part of what makes your current business so successful. What you took from that. So you did that for a while, right? And then you also, obviously, at that point, you did hook up with a few different practices where you learned, other techniques and what to do. Specifically, I remember plastic surgeons. But what was your transition from going to, let's say, a skin clinic to working with a plastic surgeon? What was that like for you at that time?
I'm going to tell you one other personal story that I think is very meaningful. After a year at clinic, I missed my home, and when I was in graduate school, I worked on a project for my coursework for the state employment insurance board of Alabama, and basically I came up with an idea of a wellness program. So when I was graduating, they promised me that they were going to create this position for me as wellness director for the state employees insurance board, which would have been a high job, but they were very slow. They had to get the position approved. It was a lot of red tape. So I accepted the job at Skin Clinic, right?
Yeah.
Waiting for that stopgap. Well, they called me on the phone a year later and said, got the position approved. We want you to come back and we want you to do this wellness program that you designed. So I pack up my U-Haul. I drive all the way back to Alabama, go to Montgomery, working for the local government, state government, high level job. And after about six months, I was like, why did I think I wanted to come back? Because now I've had a whole different experience living in New York, doing aesthetics. I missed that. I had a passion for that, for aesthetics, for making people feel better about themselves. So after a year, I left that job and went back to New York. Then that's when I hooked up and started working with a plastic surgeon for 7 years. And I really, through that 7 years working with in plastic surgery, I got an OR joint commission accredited. I ran the med spa. I helped develop business plans for new technology. I was basically in charge of everything. And it was a great, great experience. And I did a lot of injections. But working for myself the last 3 years, as scary as it's been, it's also very rewarding.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So you decided to leave the comfort, let's call it what it is, the comfort of having the marketing done for you, having the billing done for you, having everything done for you, and you showing up almost like talent and injecting, to hanging your own shingle, which, to be candid, is kind of fucking crazy. It is. I'm sorry to curse, but it is. It was crazy.
Why did it? Because when somebody looks at you dead in the eye and they say to you, Theresa, when you've got own practice, then you can do it your way. You're in mine right now, and you're going to do it my way. But you know what? Sometimes somebody else's way, for me, I just had the opportunity to do it my way. Because I saw a lot of things that could be improved.
Wow.
Period.
No, and you did, and you did it. But and I don't want to give too much away because I want Theresa to talk about it. But Theresa's model, when she started, you would price your product. You were fair. You are fair. In terms of pricing. You weren't the cheapest by far. But you also weren't the most expensive. You kind of gave an everyday rate that I remember. I remember a few years back, you and I were almost arguing. You're like, no, I want to make this available for my clients, and I'm like, you're not going to make any money. But you followed your heart and went with kind of a fair pricing model, and it paid off. So walk us through why you did it and the success that you saw with it.
I look at it this way, okay? Botox Cosmetic, Xeomin, Dysport, whatever botulinum toxin, I call them, toxins. That's the gateway drug. That's the entry into this market, whether it's with me or a plastic surgeon or a dermatologist. I think that entry should be as easy as possible, like from a financial perspective. I mean, Botox is something you're going to be doing every 3 months for some people, maybe every 6, once a year, whatever. So it has to be affordable. And, when Groupon came out, I remember working in a plastic surgery practice, we were one of the first ones to start using Groupon and offering deeply discounted Botox to the masses.
Yeah.
And my clients say to me, Theresa, why are you guys selling Botox for this amount on the internet, and I'm coming in to see you, and I have to pay this amount? And I learned something from that. I would never do a Groupon, a Living Social. I did it. We were successful. I was successful when we did them. But I like to market internally to my clients and give them throughout the year opportunities to maybe purchase a syringe at a percentage off. And guess what happens? They start bringing their friends. They start bringing their mothers, their fathers, their boyfriends, their cousins. So it works, right?
Yeah.
So I just felt like if I could keep my toxin prices low and keep my margins tight, that I could make up for what in volume,
Yeah.
And that's not saying that. I don't want to say that it's volume. It's like a puppy milk here or something like that.
Yeah.
We do high volume, but we also have a very boutique practice. We created a culture that's very different. And when I say different, I mean it's all about positive affirmation. If you walk into my office, once you get back into the room, every wall has positive affirmation. Like, we want to send the message, that you don't have to be afraid of aging or the changes that you see every decade of your life. Or it's like one day you wake up and need your hair colored. It's like one day you wake and you're like, damn, I need Botox. What happened to my lip? Or like my jawlines need to sag. So, and we're prepared to help them in a positive way.
Now, that's going to fit really well with millennials, which is the bulk of this audience. And I want to get to that in a second. But you're selling more of an experience, not just, let's be honest, anti-aging or aesthetic solutions. What was the inspiration for that?
For creating the culture that we've created.
Like for example, like people, and I remember like my last training, I was there, and I've been to your place many times. It's not bullshit. It's actually, you believe in these positive affirmations. It's part of the culture of the practice. It's part of the culture of the experience. So your end user, which is your patient, is getting an experience, not just getting injections. So to me, I'd like for you to share with your listeners, what do you think was an inspiration for that? Did you visit Disney? Did you visit another company? Was it,
I think it was born from my love of positive affirmations, self-help, women's empowerment. Right now I'm reading The Power of the Pussy. That gets a lot of attention at the airport. I think that was just that just came from my soul. That's how that happened.
Okay, so at this point, you're now a successful entrepreneur. You have 2 locations. You're based in Long Island. You're doing well, but you're growing. And I work with you and I love you, but you're busy, right? How are you managing this growth? And give me maybe 1 or 2 successful things you did right to say, hey, I'm growing. This is why. And maybe give me what are some of your current challenges with this growth. Because other thing, folks, we used to have a lot of people. We had the guy from Priceline.com. We had some successful people that maybe are much more in age and more experienced. And then we have people that are like brand new and they're like cutting their teeth. Theresa, you're growing as we speak. So what's one of the things you did right to grow? And the part B is, how are you managing this growth? Because it's not easy. People think it's easy. It's not. So walk me through that.
Okay. So in the beginning, when I started virtual, I worked in an ophthalmology office in one room. So I kept my overhead so low.
Yeah.
And that was key because I was able to, when the time was right, have the capital to go into a space and pay for the things that I knew were going to be important for my patients. Number one, that was their injection chairs.
Yeah.
I purchased this specific model. It's really an ophthalmology chair, but the way it swivels 360. I know this sounds ridiculous, but these things matter when you work as many hours as I work.
Part of the experience.
It's narrow. Yeah. Most chairs that people inject are very wide. You've got to be like in a small space. You need to like have things tight. So I keep my overhead very low in the beginning, saving money to have the capital when I knew the time was right. And I believed it would happen. I remember the day I called my accountant and I said, I got to get out of this space. I said, they're fighting in the waiting room to get into my room. Because what happens is people will have an appointment, it's booked, but then they want to add on services, but you're never going to say no. Well, I want my lip today, but they weren't scheduled for a lip. So now you've got people backed up, waiting in the waiting area, and it was just a shit show. So I called him one day and I said, I got to get out of this. I got to find a space. The other thing I have to say is I got an accountant early on who helped me, my P&Ls, helped me, walked me through a lot of, just the financials. Those are really important. And we were able to show strong financial growth so that when I started looking for a rental space, I could work with the big boys. I had enough to demonstrate that I could qualify for a 5 or 10 year lease in a grade A building in Jericho, New York. So I did those things. We did right. And how we're managing the growth now is trying to find good people. I've been very fortunate. I've been in my new space here, and I have a very strong nurse who does all my modalities: Ulthera, Cool Sculpt, Fraxel. We do a lot of that. She helps me. Of course, I oversee everything. Always got my hand in everything. So I'm a bit of a control freak, but everybody knows that.
Yeah. Okay, so to talk about the model for a second, and I think this is something that we don't talk about it enough, and I had some challenges with that running, coming from corporate to becoming an entrepreneur, is cost controls. And where every dollar is going, every cent is going. You've been, and not cheap. You are not. Theresa is not cheap. We swipe through.
Expensive to keep.
Yes, we swipe through.
I keep myself.
Well, we swipe through. We're not shy about it. We have swiped through maybe some, 4-figure bar bills back and forth back in the day over cigars and drinks. But but we earned it, right? But my point being is on the business side of things. You're I don't say frugal because it's not the right word, but you're diligent when it comes to expenses, and it came to an end. It didn't go in your pocket. It didn't go to kind of like so you could have a third home. It went to going to other modalities to getting again back to that experience for your clients. So walk me through now is some of those modalities are passive, meaning you don't need to necessarily administer them. It can be done by somebody else. And let's for now call that passive revenue versus active revenue you're doing with your hands. What percentage, not you look at the dollars, but a percentage is your active revenue versus your passive revenue, right? And then where do you want it to be maybe in 2 years on a percentage basis?
I would say it's like 70, 30, well, the 80-20. I would like to see more passive income, like with other modalities. Even like I would love to have other injectors in other states. I dream big.
Yeah.
Just finding the time to seek, to scout the locations, to find the providers, to create that business plan. That would be my ultimate goal, would be to expand to other markets, other, demographic. I think we have a great message. And we have a skincare line. I kind of hold that close, but it does really well. I formulated that with a chemist in Brooklyn. Everything's made in Brooklyn at a facility. They have the highest level of certification. They can even make sterile IV drugs. We visited there. We watched them make some of our creams. So I'd like to maybe have that more available to on the website, which we have done, that we've been dragging our feet. So those are kind of the things that we're working on.
Okay. And then in terms of trends. Okay, now I want to talk about two
We
things.
create trends. We don't follow them.
Love it. Exactly.
Mark that down.
I love it. So I want to talk about two things: millennials, and then we're going to get into what you call perennials, which you're going to hear here first.
Yeah, I wish I could take credit for that term, but I have to go back. Actually, my nurse ran across this article that was published in the Daily Telegraph about why women of 40 and 50 are now the ageless generation. It was written by Lieu. I have no clue who that is, but she coined the word perennials. So we're facing, which is exciting, a time in our world and in science, whatever, that we've got so many wonderful fillers, so many wonderful modalities that women 40, 50, 60, even 70, like they come in with their daughters and it's hard to tell which one's the mom and which one's the daughter. Women aren't wearing elastic pants anymore. Like they're coming in with, tight, with nice jeans and, age appropriate, but you can't tell who's who anymore. That's the term perennial.
Okay.
Like power.
So I would say perennials probably fall into, let's say, Gen X, and maybe even like touch upon baby boomer. So what are some of the aesthetic trends from perennials? Like, what are they doing? Are they, let's be candid. Botox at this point is common and I believe accepted, even though, because, especially millennials are seeking treatment earlier.
Right.
So we think that's common and accepted. So what are some of the newer things either that you're doing or the newer things that you are getting requests for where you maybe even yourself got to go back and look it up? What are some of those things?
Well, I think that we're really driving home that modalities such as therapy or radio frequency, which has to be done more often, more sessions. Therapy usually is focused ultrasound. The only in its class focused ultrasound. Again, it's not a laser, but it does build collagen. So I like to say, come in once a year and bank some collagen. Get an Ulthera treatment, right? Tighten that jawline. So then you run less of a risk of having that patient who gets overfilled. Because what happens, that's also a slippery slope. So I think that we're really focusing on anything that we can do to stimulate your body's own collagen. So collagen building. Also using fillers that stimulate collagen as well. Radiesse, Bellafill, Sculptra, right? So you get that immediate gratification of the lift, right, of the filler going into the tissue, but then you get the added benefit of the longer benefit of those products help stimulate your body's own collagen. So the studies demonstrate. So educating people on all the different fillers, which as a provider challenges me to understand every nuance of every new filler that comes on the market. An example, do you ever hear there's not just Restylane anymore. There's Restylane Lift, there's Restylane Refine, there's Restylane Define. We don't even talk about Restylane anymore.
Yeah.
And then if you look at the Juvederm products, like people will come in and go, well, what did you have before? I had Juvederm. I said, look, and I pulled the boxes out. I was like, look, there's Juvederm Ultima, there's Juvederm Ultra Plus, there's Juvederm Volbella, and now Juvederm Velour. Like, it's a minefield for people. So I'm the girl who grabs all the boxes out, and I'll just show you. If you want to listen, I will tell you every, nuance of these fillers. So you have to have used them for a long time because nothing's perfect, and you've had to be in this business long enough so that things do happen, you know how to deal with it. If a lumper does it, which is very rare, but it can happen.
Got it. And you kind of are on the periphery of a few different spaces. And what I mean by that is you are somewhat of a spa, like a traditional spa, because you have some of those services. You function primarily as an aesthetic practice because you have all the modalities as well as the training for injections. And then you kind of dip into plastic surgery. Not that you're doing plastic surgery, but you're probably preventing, I would say, 95% of the people that come to you are not needing plastic surgery because of the stuff that you're doing. Walk us through that, because it's not just a business model, but it's how do I say? It's kind of a mantra, if you will. Like, I don't want surgery, but I want to look good. You know what I mean? So walk us through how you go about preventing surgery for a lot of people.
Well, I think we educate and we provide solutions.
Yeah.
And I consider our clients, we have a very intimate relationship. We celebrate their marriages, we celebrate their divorces, we celebrate the birth of their children, their grandchildren, their birthdays. So we have a very close, intimate relationship. And there are times in the process where I will say to them, I've done the best I can do. This is all I have in my toolbox right now.
Yeah.
Have you thought about going for a consult? Do you want to go talk about a neck lift or a mid facelift? 9 times out of 10, they'll say to me, no, I really don't want to do that. So I don't know which comes first. I don't know if they seek me out because I have a reputation for making people look good. So they believe I'm going to help prevent the surgery, or they look so good that surgery never, when it does cross their mind, they're okay with how they look. I don't know. I mean, I think it's all blended together somehow. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. And one of the areas that I'm really, really fascinated with now, because I'm learning, I'm always learning every day, and I think we're about 70 podcasts deep, and I probably got more learning just by listening to people's stories and their experiences. And one of the areas that I'm kind of obsessed with now is the transition from entrepreneur to CEO. We had a co-founder of Priceline on, and he talked about there being innovators, builders, and operators, right? So you were an inventor, right? You invented the concept. You built the concept. But now you're operating a business. So walk us through your transition from, frankly, being an entrepreneur to being more of the boss lady CEO, which are two different muscles, they're two different experiences, they're two different actions, right? So how are you transitioning from that kind of entrepreneur to the CEO? How are you transitioning with that, and walk us through that a little bit?
Okay, so I think that most life solutions, even in business, in personal business, running a company, occur through doing, right? And not overthinking everything. And listening to your gut. So I think, first of all, always keep moving forward. Always keep refining your techniques. So that's number one. Also, I've surrounded myself with a lot of smart people, like you helping me, I don't know if the audience knows, but you do, you manage my website, the pages, the SEO, which we don't even optimize as well as we could.
Yeah.
And, my accountant, even though he's in Alabama, we talk almost daily, any decision financial that we make for a modality, like we've worked on the business plan, like how many treatments does it take before, you see the light at the end of the tunnel of making a profit. Like we talk about all of that. I've had opportunity in my personal life to know really smart people that ran Fortune 500 companies, and I would sit and ask questions, like taking little pearls from them, and I'll tell you, I had a very good friend that told me a story once. He said he was the CEO of Georgia Pacific a long time ago. He said every Friday when all my business presidents were out playing golf, he said I was the one that was at work going around and talking to all the employees to see how their life was going and how their job was going.
True, and it's indicative of both of us doing a podcast on a Saturday. It's where I'm in New Jersey, she's in New York. It's 83 outside. It's absolutely beautiful. But we both decided
at the beach, but us.
Exactly. Which our day will come, and we'll enjoy the beach. So what's next? And you and I always talk strategy. So let's maybe talk as we normally would. So what's next? Do we get e-com for you? You're looking at another location. Do you get an extender? What's next for you?
You know what else is next too? I'm working on a profit sharing plan for my employees. I think that's really important. Nice. I'm in this to win it, right? Yep. My ass is on the line here. And everybody that works with me, I feel a responsibility to them to provide education, to provide growth, to help them, but that's also, there's a financial responsibility, and I want for them what some people didn't do for me, Listen, they have access to one of the best accountants I know. They could call him up any time of the day or night and ask them a question about their own personal things, right? Yeah. Who gets that? smart people, you know?
Well,
So, I mean, I want to keep working on the culture internally, like make that really strong, because I think before I can go into another state, for example, I have to refine home first, right?
True. You brought a good point, and I always say if people are listening this long, they're either family, really interested, or stalkers, right? So if people are listening this long into it. Yeah, exactly, right. This long into it. I had a situation where I kept having people just ask me for more and more money, right? And I'm sorry, but as an entrepreneur, not even a small business, but as an entrepreneur, the truth is the more money you put out, the less money's in your pocket. It's just a fucking fact, point period. Right now, you have to learn to invest. Will I give employee A more money because it'll have return or provide value? That's a separate discussion, right? But I kept having certain employees that would previously work for me kept asking me for more and more money, and I just didn't have it, or I frankly didn't see the value of giving it to them. And I did my best to communicate that, right? However, you brought up a great point, but I was noticing that they would have their $5 Starbucks, that they like their happy hours Thursday through Sunday. And I don't like to spend other people's money. I do not like to count other people's money. But when you keep asking me for money, it caused me to say, wait a second, should I have a financial planner come in to talk to these employees? Because if I can't give them any more money, maybe they need some more financial advice or maybe financial discipline. So I like the fact that you make Corey's his name, available to your staff, because that's a value add that's valuable, because maybe you can't give them more money, but if you're able to manage their money that you give them, it goes further. So I really like that a lot, Theresa. So before we conclude, you're growing, and you probably had to make a lot of tough decisions over the last year, whether it be firing that person because they just weren't growing with the business, or it might have been raising your prices on your first client. What are some of the tough decisions that you had to make in lieu of growing the business, and what was the result of those decisions?
Well, I had to accept that I'm not for everybody, but I will never, ever again apologize for who I am.
Yeah.
I had an experience with an extender, she did come work for me. She worked for me 6 months, and she left. I think it was a personality conflict more than anything. And I guess it was tough to accept that I could teach her and her skill set was coming along, but she just didn't like me. And I think that was hard to accept, but I think it's a challenge as a woman and as a boss. As you said, I don't like to use that word, but I am a boss. Yeah. And I think a lot of times women have problems accepting direction from other women. Does that make sense?
No, that makes absolute sense. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you had to separate that relationship, which I assume was pretty tough to do, no?
Yeah. I had to hear a few, criticisms that I think I grew from. But ultimately, the reason she walked out was just something so trivial that I wouldn't even bother to go into. It was just so ridiculous. But it was such a girl thing.
Well, you know what it is? One thing I learned, and I knew this from corporate, but I was scared to administer it in my entrepreneur part of my life. And if anything, I thought it would have sooner, because you have to. As an entrepreneur, your business corrects itself over time. And if you're not doing well, it will let you know. And if it's doing great, you'll see it in the bank. And I was always non-confrontational when it came to underperformance and getting rid of people. Like in corporate, I was strong with it. But I believe in retrospect in my entrepreneurial life, I probably held on to a lot of relationships that I didn't need to hold on to. So I'm happy that you were able to resolve that, and you're continuing to grow. So we're going to put links to your website, virtualskinspa.com. in the article and on the podcast. But how can we find you on social media, which you have a phenomenal social media program? So
we love our Instagram. We're very popular. So our Instagram is at Virtual Skin Spa. And our Facebook is the same, Virtual Skin Spa.
Beautiful.
And I'm
Beautiful.
we do a lot of befores and afters on our social media. And I love the fact that we do real ones. Like, we don't Photoshop. Sometimes you'll see a little drop of blood on the lip. I mean, they're real. And I think people want to see real, authentic. You know, I'm tired of the airbrushed Kardashians, you know? And then Kim K's ass really got all over the internet. You know, remember that?
Yep.
So I really think that women want to see real befores and afters, and they're amazing. They're snappy. So
True. Now you're killing it with Instagram. You're north of 100,000 followers, and obviously some celebrities support you. So that's awesome. Are you on Snapchat yet? Because
no, we're dragging our feet.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't.
And my son keeps telling me that. He's like, "Mom, what is up with this?" He's like, "You got to do Snapchat." I'm like, whatever. I got to sit down and understand it first.
Well, that's how you are, because you don't do anything unless you do it, and once you do it, you're hardcore. So, Theresa, as always, I was looking forward to having you on. I know it took a few weeks to get this together. This will be posted shortly, and Theresa, thank you.
So wait, one question. How do I use this on my social media, on my Insta?
Oh, absolutely. This is actually a good discussion. Good question. So obviously, as your SEO guy, what we're going to do on our side is we're going to blast it out everywhere we can. There's actually an app or a way for Nazarene to put a photo of you on Virtual Skin Spa. And maybe I could do it on New Theory and she could repurpose it. And what it would do is it'd be a photo of you, and then the audio for 1 minute can play in the background with a link to the article. So that's kind of how we can do that for Facebook. It's easy. That's just sharing it. But for Instagram, there's a way to incorporate the audio into it, which is pretty badass. So I'll get that over to you, and we'll make sure that people that will hear it. But we also want a lot of people to discover you because you have a lot of special things going on. So
thank you.
All right. So thanks, guys. This is a New Theory podcast signing off.
Thank you.